Dear visitor, I invite you for a virtual tour in the Goldberger house in Budapest in Arany János utca, in which an unconventional cultural institution is operating. We are standing in the darkest corner of the basement of the Goldberger house. This is the biggest document repository of the institution, the Vera and Donald Blinken Open Society Archives, in short, Blinken OSA, or simply OSA, which is operating in this house. My name is Iván Székely. I am Senior Research Fellow in OSA. It is not easy to get in here. It's a climate-controlled area, protected with security equipment, fingerprint scanners, and other measures. Generally, researchers and visitors are not allowed to enter here, but the virtual visitor is welcome, of course. Close to 10 kilometers of materials are stored here. Such a quantity can only be stored with moving shelves. So if you move one, then the others close, the other corridors close. This is more than a simple repository. There's a sophisticated database running in the background, containing the logical and physical connections between the documents. But there are some interesting non-conventional documents here in the basement. For example, this one. This is the collection of the top secret educational videos, educational films, celluloid films of the former Ministry of the Interior. And the story of this collection is also interesting. A former colleague of ours rescued this collection literally from the garbage of a dog training center of the police somewhere outside the city. But there are other interesting documents and objects here. Here, for example, you can see the tools used for producing illegal underground publications, so-called samizdat publications, before the change of the political system. What you see here is a silk screen frame which was used for producing such materials before the fall of communism. What you see here on the boxes are made of acid-free cardboard in our own box factory. The labels contain the data from the database behind this. And the researchers sitting in the research room, you will see it on the first floor, are served from here by a colleague of ours and through a backstage elevator. Maybe it's interesting to note that the first chief archivist of this organization was the former deputy national archivist of the United States who set up this archive, and that's why all measurements here are in inches and not in centimeters according to US standards. Blinken OSA's activities have four main pillars. It is an archival, educational, research and cultural institution. It is one of the biggest archives in the world on Cold War and communism. The most well-known part of it is the archive of the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and also one of the most important archives in the world on grave violations of human rights, including the Yugoslavian wars. One thing you cannot find here, empty shelves, and that's because we are virtually full, so we can accept physical donations only in a very limited number. But OSA is not the first user of this house. The house itself has a very interesting history, so let's go upstairs to the ground floor and try to dig into the history of the house. We are standing on the ground floor in the most imposing hall of the building, which was built in 1911, so it is more than 100 years old. but looks much younger since it was designed in an innovative pre-modern style. The house was built for the textile manufacturer Goldberger family and became their downtown showroom and merchandising center. This atrium with a double glass roof was designed exactly for the textiles in order to check the real color of the textiles in natural light. The head of the world-famous textile company, Leo Goldberger, who received the Nobel title, was member of the upper chamber of the Hungarian parliament. During the Nazi occupation of the city in the Second World War, was unwilling to flee and leave the country. He was caught and deported to the Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria, where he died on the first day of the liberation of the camp. After the war, the Goldberger holding was nationalized, and communist textile companies were operating for decades here in this house. Another new chapter came in 1981 when a very special closed department store, closed from the general public, started to operate here. The so-called dollar shop, its official name was Consumex department store. So in this dollar shop, only those comrades were allowed to buy here Western goods who had Western currencies lawfully. After the political change, the closed department store became open department stores, but a few years after, when the big shopping centers opened in the city, it lost its appeal and lost its importance and was closed down quite soon. The newest chapter in this history began when the CEU, the Central European University, purchased the building, refurbished it according to the archive's needs, and OSA, the Open Society Archives, occupied the building in 2005. Today, this is our exhibition hall, which is called Galeria Centralis, where exhibitions, film screenings, book launches, concerts, and other public events are generally organized. These events generally attract great interest. Now the house is empty, because this tour, this virtual tour, is conducted in the period of the partial lifting of restrictions introduced in response to the coronavirus pandemic, and we have not yet opened the house for visitors. You can see here the remnants of an exhibition, a closed down exhibition because of the pandemic, on the paradoxical relationship between the communist secret services and the banned small churches and religious communities. You can visit the virtual version of this exhibition on the internet. Let's continue the tour on the first floor. At this place, on the first floor, there was a huge mirror wall before the Second World War, which was designed for checking the imperfect parts of silk and other textiles for the Goldberger factory in natural light. Now this space is occupied by an artwork, an art installation created by Gergely Barca, and it is a small archive in itself, the archive of the everyday life of communism through the photos of a single family. You perhaps recognize the pattern of the black and white frames. And yes, it's a QR code, and the title of the installation is also QR code. And if you have a reader, a QR code reader in your phone, you can read the code and you will be redirected to a fictional Facebook site where you can learn the history of creating this installation and also the invisible layers of the artwork. Let's don't neglect the book cubes either, which are artworks. You can find a few of them, for example, this one. These are discarded books which did not get to the paper mill, but instead became raw material of object of applied art. In the Goldberger era, this room in here, let's go in. This was the storage of the textiles to be shown to the customers at the big mirror wall. In the Consumex era, it was the clothing department, and now it is the research room of the archives. It's again empty because of the coronavirus restrictions. Here you can see modern equipment, and the researchers and visitors can read here documents, can use the microfilm scanner, can watch films, and of course use the different digital materials here. The two main collection areas of the archive is Communism and Cold War, within which the most well-known part is the archive of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and the other one is the collection, one of the most important collections in the world, of grave violations of human rights, including the Yugoslavian war in focus. Let's go upstairs again. We are standing now on the second floor, on the balconies of this floor, watching the inner spaces of the building and the offices of my colleagues in OSA. There are two smaller repositories on this floor too, similarly to the first floor, including the repository of the audiovisual materials. Blink and OSA does not only preserve paper-based materials, but also video recordings, celluloid films, sound recordings, photographs, and the like. Just a few examples. We have the full video documentation of the Black Box Foundation documenting the change of the political system here in this country in 1989 and later. We have the so-called genocide archives documenting uncensored war crimes and other terrible happenings in several parts of the year, received from an American producer. And we also have the full collection of documentary films from the Versio annual International Human Rights Documentary Film Festival. Each year, about 500 to 600 submissions are sent to the festival, out of which we can show 50 or 60 maximum, but all the films remain here and become researchable in OSA. Versio has its own web page, similarly to our other spin-off projects, for example, the Yellow Star Houses project, or the 1956 Refugees project, or the 1989 project documenting each day of that year. And I haven't yet mentioned that when this house became 100 years old, that is in 2011, together with the Center of Young Architects, we started the so-called Budapest 100 project, which since then is organized each year in Budapest, in the city. But we still have interesting things to see up there. This is the rooftop of the house, an area closed from visitors, but our virtual visitor is welcome here too. Besides showing you the nice view, I would like to say a few words about the plans to enlarge the house, to build a new floor on top of this one. Because as you see, the two neighboring houses are lower than this one, than the Goldberger house. So we asked Ferenc Bán, renowned architect, to design the new floor for us. Ferenc Bán, who designed the new National Theatre at Deák Square. But nowadays you can't see the National Theatre at Deák Square because the building of the theatre was stopped, was halted because of political reasons. So the magnum opus of his career has never been realized. But he designed a giant egg-shaped structure, a titanium egg, in order to bring all the noisy or loud programs up here with a nice rooftop terrace, while the silent exhibitions and other public events could have remained down there in the Galleria. But as you see, there's no titanium egg here, no rooftop terrace, so this design of him has not been realized either. So finally, let's visit the reception hall of the building on the ground floor. While going downstairs, it is worth taking a look at these strange objects hanging on the wall. This is an art installation, a preserved part of an installation called Concrete, created by 3 doctoral students of the University of Fine Arts. The students covered the whole surface of the Galleria's floor with lightened concrete and molded books in the concrete. Visitors had to walk on the books, and when they stepped on a book, the books opened for a moment, text fragments, images became visible for a moment, and you could contemplate on the fate of memory, on the fate of books or recorded information in general. Strangely enough, the reception of this installation was quite controversial because stepping on books is a cultural taboo. Only children were happy without a second thought, jumping on books which they are not allowed to do at home. This is another piece, another preserved piece of the same installation from the back side. We are standing in the reception hall of the Goldberger House and the Blinken Open Society archives. Although the title of this presentation or this virtual tour was Everything About the Goldberger House, all what I was able to show you is but snapshots from the rich history of the building and the institution occupying it. Some of the seemingly colorful stories had a rather dark shade, as had the history of the 20th century, history that made an imprint on the house and on the collection of the archives. Nevertheless, I hope that you could form an impression that this is a very interesting, unconventional house and institution operating in it. And I also hope that in the foreseeable future, we'll have the chance to meet you and the other participants of this virtual tour in person. So, see you soon.